Mallock and welcome to Sail TV. Our program is about performances and exhibits in the Lubec area. As those of you who live here know, things get a little quiet after Labor Day. The arts calendar for August was nearly 4 pages long. September is only 1 page. But we have people to interview and information to give you. I hope you enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Van Riper, and I'm here at a very happy mission to talk about the 20th anniversary of SummerKeys, a music vacation in Lubec, Maine, that opened its doors in 1992 with a handful of students playing the piano, and which this year has played host to some 300 students with 10 separate instruments, including other workshops in craft, creative writing, and photography. The genesis of SummerKeys, I guess, is something that we're all interested in because those of us who have been here either as students or on the faculty, we've all seen the tremendous effect it's had on the town of Lubec. And we're going to talk with a panel this evening about that and about the genesis of SummerKeys. I'm happy to say that on our panel is the founder and director of SummerKeys, Bruce Potterton, who created SummerKeys really from a dream and a bit of good luck, and turned it into what it is today. In addition, we have a longtime member of the faculty, the famed cellist Peter Lewy. Peter has been a member of the faculty from the very beginning, and as a matter of fact, the SummerKeys season now begins and ends with Peter's wonderful cello concerts. And then finally, the member of our family here, and literally it is a family, is Rosalee Woodward, who is a longtime Mainer and who has been, again, working with Bruce to help SummerKeys exist and function well for many, many years. She and many members of her family have helped keep SummerKeys on the wheels, as it were, and both administratively and otherwise. So as we begin, I remember my own first impressions had been when my wife Judy and I first came to Lubec nearly 30 years ago. Lubec really looked like a ghost town. In fact, I remember a photograph that Judy made in which it was on a Sunday, and Lubec looked absolutely deserted. Doesn't work that way now, because SummerKeys and Lubec are jumping. And I think that we'd like to talk to you, Bruce, a little bit about how that all came about. Now, you always say in the beginnings of your literature for every concert that SummerKeys began with a dream and a spate of good luck. And I know that the first year you had, something like 40 or 50 students, and now you have more than 300. Tell us a little bit how those first years came about and what that was like.
Well, it began really with coming up here with friends on a fishing trip, and everything, when I say spate of good luck, everything was missed. We flew into Portland with the idea that we would drive up Route 1 through some of the quaint villages and then head for Route 9 for some of the lakes that were in inland Maine so that my friends could fish. Well, we got to Portland, and my remembrance of Portland from having been there many years ago was it was, not that full, and you could go there and get a motel room. Well, everything was sold out. So we had to drive through, I think it was 3.5 hours north to Bucksport to get a room. And so we began our trip through Bucksport, and on the way up, then we stumbled across Lubec, and it was because some of my friends said, no, let's not stop there. But I saw signs in Machias of the real estate selling at the price of used cars, and I said, come on, we have to go have a look at this place. So we went through, and ever since I could never get the town out of my mind. It remained as something, such a beautiful spot to me. So after we got back home, I contacted a realtor, and they sent me a catalog, and I came back in March, and I put a down payment on a house. And it's not that I was that wealthy. What had happened was we were in the Persian Gulf War, and I had gotten a tiny bequest from a distant relative, which allowed me to put a down payment on a house here. And so I did. And when I came up the next summer to occupy the house, to do the signing of the papers and occupy the house, I thought, my Lord, what have I done? I'm 12 hours from New York. I'm not going to come here for weekends. And I remembered stuff I used to do as a kid, which is when I would travel to Cape Cod and in my 2 weeks off from my job and practice at the Barnstable Conservatory, which still exists. It's a community music school, and I think probably much bigger now. And I stayed in Hyannis and would bike across to the conservatory and swim. And that's what I did every day, and it was an ideal vacation for me. And I continued to do stuff like that every time I had a vacation. But this vacation was not a typical thing, going somewhere to want to practice and just have your, spend your own time, do your own thing. So I thought, maybe I could offer this, here. And so I spoke to a couple townspeople, and you have to be out of your mind. Who's going to come to Lubec to study the piano? That was, so. But the Spades of Good Luck started. It was as if there were a hole in space-time where a music school was supposed to be, because I sent out, for instance, a newsletter thinking, what harm could it do to every major newspaper on the East Coast? Who picks up on it but the Washington Post? On a Sunday edition, in the front page of the travel section, out comes this thing about this music school that had started in Lubec for aspiring pianists and no admission requirements. That's what started it. I got more than 400 phone calls because this was syndicated across the country.
And this was before the internet. This was before...
Yeah, before anything like that. And boom, 50 people signed up. That was the start of it. It was more than that, because before that even happened, I'm a lover of thrift shops and yard sales, and I had stumbled across a little painting this size in a thrift shop in New Jersey. I won't say where it was, but make a long story short, I began to see it was more than just a little painting. It looked very beautiful. It sold at Sotheby's for $5,500, which allowed me to convert the back of the house, the little barn that was attached to 2 practice studios, and buy 3 used pianos. So that's really how it began.
So that really is something that's out of Antiques Roadshow, kind of.
Well, you can see the good luck thing.
Right, that certainly is 3 things. And I wonder if we could perhaps bring in our next guest, or our additional guest, which would be Carol Runberg, who is just coming in from our... welcome, Carol. Come on in. Have a seat right next to Bruce.
Okay.
Carol Runberg began her career at SummerKeys as a student, and then went on to become a medical staffer, as well as a really accomplished accompanist here at SummerKeys. So, Carol, what we're going to do as we're beginning our description of what's happening, we're going to be talking about the history of SummerKeys and some of our reminiscences. But before we get to you, Carol, by the way, welcome, I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the fact that this great vacation that you had was something that you had to do everything on your own, following your own schedule. Well, of course, that is very similar to what you're doing now at SummerKeys and have done. I remember once I asked you, I said, do you mean to tell me, Bruce, I can't play the piano, that if I signed up to play the piano, I could come? And you said, if you sign up, we will teach you. Now, that does seem to make SummerKeys unique, if not very unusual, in terms of music schools. And Peter, by all means, jump in on something like this. Is that rare in your opinion, in your experience?
Yeah, it is. And, the motto is come as you are. And, music is something I think all of us who teach here believe that everyone can share, and that everyone has a resource when tapped. And, I started an 81-year-old woman here from scratch, and she did well. Came for years and years and years. She was able to participate in music and make music with her husband, who had been playing music all his life, and it was very special for him. It's the kind of place where things like that can happen. And we've had many beginners here. And being able to begin in a concentrated way like this, where you have a lesson every day or every other day, depending on the program you're in, you can get all the habits right and really get off to a great start.
That's interesting about getting the habits right, because as Judy and I teach the photography workshops here, and one of the things that we make a big deal about is that the students must work in manual mode. They can't use the automatic modes, whereas I say, we don't want you to let your camera do the thinking for you. You're going to have to actually think about light and making a photograph. I suspect there's something of a corollary there with regard to getting technique right, getting things right in SummerKeys. Carol, tell us a little bit about your experience as an accompanist and your experience with some of the students here. Some of your reminiscences about, particularly with newbies coming in here for the first time. Are they all nervous? Are they all saying, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to do? And what happens?
Well, we sit down and we get going. We talk it over, and we spend some time with some of the passages that they want to work on. And as we talk, people start to relax a little bit. We take a little break, we do some more, and keep on going with it. And it usually winds up with a person who feels more relaxed and eventually more confident.
Can I ask a silly question, because I'm not a musician, but I mean, do you have to know how to read music? Can I come up here not even knowing how to read music?
Sure.
Really?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, and it happens quite a bit.
Is that right? Do some students learn by ear, or?
Not as I would teach them. They may with other instruments, but I think not as I would teach them.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I teach them sort of standard notation, music
But
notation.
you know, one of the beauties of SummerKeys is that you're surrounded by students of all levels.
Yes.
And we've had some extremely accomplished musicians come here, and they learn from seeing the beginners and
Exactly.
the intermediates learning, and it helps them with their fundamentals, and they feel, you know, they're able to share their talent and have it appreciated, and so it's great for beginners and it's great for advanced players.
Let me back up a little bit and talk to Rosalee a bit, because earlier on, before the broadcast, we were talking a little bit about the beginnings of SummerKeys and how, and your experience, because you were with Bruce from the get-go. And one of the things I'm curious about is asking you to talk a little bit about how this guy, who comes from New Jersey, was able to weave himself into the fabric of the community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, he first came here, he wanted to have a place to have a concert and to do some practicing. And he was thinking of the parish hall of the local Catholic church where I attended. So Father Limbo at the time was the priest, and he asked somebody from the choir or the music department to please go speak with this man. So I went down and we talked about his getting the hall for practice purposes and for a concert. And he said, do you know anybody that might want to clean my house? And I said, well, I could clean your house. So it's been, I think that was a proposal, because I've been cleaning his house ever since, and many more of them as well. So it's been just a wonderful experience.
Judy and I have always said that Bruce is a guy that nobody can dislike. My impression has been that there has been, there's always going to be some kind of tension when you have, the traditional thing called town versus gown kind of thing. And yet, I think that it's fair to say that Bruce has had a very good relationship with members of the local community. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, I'm going to let other people say this, but tell me your impressions about that.
Well, no matter where you go and you mention SummerKeys, especially in Lubeck, people will say how wonderful it has been for the economy of the town as well as the culture of the town. And we have just grown because of this. Our Water Street, as you were speaking of, is no longer desolate. It has people there. And just recently someone said to me, it's all because of SummerKeys, which is true.
Yeah, and one of the things though, I remember when I was talking to you earlier in the summer, Bruce, about SummerKeys and how it has grown so much. One of the things that you emphasized to me was that you were eager to have SummerKeys retain its current flavor, this kind of, I don't want to say down home, but certainly unaffected, very simpatico, very welcoming. And one of the things that we spoke about was the fact that you have adamantly not sought out corporate or other funding like that. Can you talk a little bit about that and what are some of the things that you think might not be the best thing in the world if suddenly somebody said, you know, I'm a foundation and we want to give you $500,000? I'm just blue skying here, Bruce.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think that's ever been going to happen, but it's usually an offer like that has some kind of a string attached to it. You know, you know, my brother would kind of like to teach,
yes.
you know, viola there. I'm sure you could find a place for him. Well, maybe we could or maybe we couldn't, but
Yes.
it does tend to happen.
Do you find, though, that, I know one of the things that, check me if I'm wrong, but some, for example, students are practicing in various private homes, things like that. There's a really kind of blending. I find it really remarkable when we, for example, have some of our photo students make some photographs of the practice sessions. You do feel as if you're going into someone's home, and that, I think, adds to a kind of atmosphere that is very welcoming and certainly relaxing, perhaps, so not threatening to a student. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a woman in town who just loves having us practice in her place, and she seems desolate when nobody's in there practicing. Gwen Clover, I mean, everybody knows Gwen.
Right,
She's been so generous with us, you know, offering space and providing fans and music stands and special things in the bathrooms of washcloths, things like that. You know, that's marvelous.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, I don't think we can have a discussion about SummerKeys without talking about the egg crates. Now, and for those of you who don't know, some of the practice rooms, and they still exist, right?
Yes,
right?
they do.
And this was the first year that I actually learned what that was. It's an anechoic chamber. Who knew? Which means that it doesn't allow echoes. It doesn't allow echoing. Well, I've photographed in major recording studios, and I don't see egg crates there. However, the egg crates do in fact perform this function, and I can remember photographing you in one of those rooms. It looked like a padded cell, but Rosalee, you know something about the egg crates. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do, because my husband and my son, who now is the office manager, and my two daughters worked with Basil, my husband, putting up egg crates and making several repairs. And there was quite a job to put them up, actually. It took quite a while, but it really helps to soundproof the studio.
And it really works. That's the thing that's so bizarre.
And you know, you get used to them.
Yeah.
They come in sheets.
Yeah, they come in
Yes,
sheets, right.
So then, and you set them on.
Good
The
point.
sheets are roughly 18
Square, yeah, right.
And then they get stapled on, and
Yeah.
they look quite nice, actually.
It's like
Where-
a
But it's a little
Where'd you
strange.
get them? Where'd you get them?
Egg farm.
Egg
Yeah,
farm.
they're really for eggs, a couple of dozen eggs.
Silly question. Okay, very good. Some of the things I remember that I can recall, Judy and I can recall, when we first came up and got to know you, and we went to those first concerts at the Roman Catholic, was the community parish hall?
Parish hall.
It, again, very down home, very nice, but it had its limitations. I remember we had to set up the folding chairs, and I remember that the way it was configured, that as the sun went down, the sun was in the eyes of the audience, and of course it was not there wasn't great ventilation, because there were some windows that didn't open, and there were those that didn't open completely. You had to kind of put tape on the screens. The transition to the Congregational Church, and this lovely setting now. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, and what are some of the things that make that space so special for musicians? And I'm curious to ask Peter about that as well, in terms of the sound. And Carol, you please jump in as well.
Well, we had been invited by the Congregational Christian Church to have the concerts there if we chose, and it was sort of heartbreaking to move away from Sacred Heart because they'd been so nice to us.
Right, they certainly have.
But they began to, Father Lembo began to realize that we had a problem with also standing room. Standing room, and the fire marshal could, come in at any time and said, you're way beyond the capacity of this hall. So then we began to talk to folks at Congregational Christian. They graciously allowed us to come over there, and so that's how that began.
Now, acoustically, I'm assuming that a church like that has that beautiful pipe organ, I'm assuming the acoustics are pretty good. But again, I'm not a musician. I mean, is it enjoyable to play there?
I think it's wonderful to play there.
Really?
It's the audience, the townspeople. And this come to these concerts. They come. They are free concerts, of course. So whoever wants to come can come. But the big deal about these concerts is the way musicians feel about the audience, right? Because they say there is no other audience they ever play for that's like this audience. Because the audience is so receptive. You can play anything from them. For them, from Byrd up to, I mean, William Byrd, early English virginalist music, up straight up through Messiaen and contemporary music of any kind, and they say it grows them.
Oh, interesting.
If they don't particularly care for it, it grows them.
Interesting. Peter, why don't you talk to that point?
Well, there's just a wonderful atmosphere in the church. It's a beautiful church with a beautiful space, which is very nice, but it's filled up with beautiful people. The local people who are really wonderful people. Maine people are very special, hearty people, very unique, each one. They're like seashells or something, you know, they're very, very special. And then very interesting people who come up here to vacation. So, you know, we're off the beaten track, and it takes a certain kind of person to want to.
You have to want to come here, don't you?
Right. And so the audience is wonderful, and it just makes for a wonderful experience to perform. The acoustics are great, and so it's really special. I think all of us who perform here look forward all year long.
And now Carol, talk a little bit. You've played that, as I recall, that's a very good piano that we have in the church. And tell me a little bit about playing in that room and what that's like.
Well, first of all, it's a lovely Steinway piano. It's a grand. And for me, it's my usual practice piano is an upright. So I have to get used to the sound of having a grand piano with a sound out there somewhere and pull that together. Playing that piano is a treat. I don't get to do it very often, and I do like to play it. It's got, and Bruce has been very careful to look after all the pianos so that they have the optimal sound. They're tuned regularly. When there's a concert coming up, the tuner comes in and she does a fine job. She's worked on that piano to really spruce it up. So it's quite an unusual piano in that respect. That it's kept up, it's maintained, it's ready to use for the most wonderful musicians.
And that's, you know, it's interesting, and when you talk about it, you can always, in some ways, people sometimes will say when they look at a photographer's work and they really like it, and say, oh, you must have a wonderful camera. And that always gets our goat. It's like talking to a writer and saying, you must have a really great typewriter. Nonetheless, there is something to be said for the instrument itself. And I would venture to say that, for example, that Steinway, for example, might be like the equivalent of a Leica or something that I would use in my work. And nonetheless, it all depends on how you use it and what you're using it for. In terms of I think probably we're talking about the church. I don't think it's too far off the path to put in a pitch for the Congregational Church. They were in desperate need of funds for the refurbishment of that church, and it would be a sin and a shame, I think, if the concerts had to be delayed because of problems with the church. So I want to put in a pitch. If those of you see this, the Congregational Christian Church in Lubec, Maine needs your help. That's the end of that pitch. But they're wonderful people, and really it's such a pleasure to go to concerts there. And Judy and I do them all the time. And as I say, we live in Washington, D.C., you know, capital of the free world, and we hear more wonderful music here than we ever do either in Washington or in New York City. So I'm thinking about unusual memories. I know we talked a little bit about what it was like with the parish hall and what you had to do there, and it was not the best experience moving over to the Christian church. Over the course of the years that you all have been with SummerKeys, what are some of the quirky memories, the unusual things, the things that you laugh about when you say, oh my God, I can't believe that happened? Things like that over the course of the years that makes SummerKeys maybe unusual or quirky or really cherished experience. And I'm going to start with Bruce. I'm going to put the spotlight on you right now.
Well, quirky things, I mean, the picture is, you know, the Sotheby's, I think that was
Yeah.
the most quirky, and maybe you better pass it out to somebody else because I'm kind of running dry here. on
I see.
quirkiness.
And quirkiness. All right. Okay. Anybody else want to jump in? Don't all speak at once.
Well, I was gonna
Yes,
say that this isn't funny, but when SummerKeys ends,
Mhm.
I have the pleasure of cleaning up. And I go into the buildings and
Mhm.
I just wanna sit down and cry,
Oh.
because it's so sad, it's ghost-like. I mean, I can see the staff and I
Right,
can,
right.
and I just can't wait for the next summer to happen, because this goes on for 20 years now.
That's right. That's
And,
right.
Yeah, so, but, you know, and there is some little quirky thing, my daughter works for Bruce, and she and he have this thing teasing all the time.
They do they?
And he says that he, you know, isn't too much of a believer in Christmas and all. Well, one time he came here a couple of years ago, and on his roof was this Santa Claus standing in June. And he now also has another addition this year. Do you want
Yes,
to
we
mention
know.
them?
Well, came out of the office one day and I got into my car and I thought, I looked at my car and there were antlers on it with little jingle bells attached. And I thought, Bethia, you wretch, you. But I love her so much I haven't taken I will never take those antlers off until somebody else does.
They are very becoming, and I think that they are really. We know it's Bruce when we see
I
it.
get a lot of comments and I always tell people, well, it's difficult to grow them.
Peter, any remembrance? I mean, did you always want to do your cello classes outdoors? Usually, you're in the Christian temple, right? In that wonderful community room there.
Well, I try to do as much outdoors as possibly can. The view here is spectacular. I live in Manhattan, so getting up here, and you know, in Lubeck, you can't turn around without a spectacular view. And where we have our cello classes, you know, 180 degrees of spectacular scenery right there around us. It's quiet. We're not disturbing anyone, and it's wonderful. And you know, I have a class from 9 to 10 every morning out there, if weather permitting, and as many lessons as I can out there. We rarely take the pianos outside though. Bruce gets upset if we do that. So.
Yeah, particularly the Steinway, right?
I'll put a pitch in for Carnegie Hall.
Yes, you should.
Please,
Thank
we
you
have
for
Carnegie
mentioning
Hall.
that. We do.
When I looked at the garage that I have, and I said, no cars are going to go in the car, niggy. And then it had a certain ring to it about concerts in New York and so on. So we've called it Carnegie Hall ever since. And people can go and practice at Carnegie Hall. That's how
We have 2 pianos in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Two now.
That's one of our 2 piano spaces. Carol's Barn Garage.
And it's a lovely building, it really is. And in fact, I can remember Judy and I photographed a couple of times Kent Hewitt's jazz piano class in there. And got some very nice pictures. I think as we're getting near the end of this broadcast, we should talk a little bit about the future, because one of the things is, do you foresee, Bruce, any further plans for expansion, or is this about a good level of students, around the 300 mark, or is there always room for more?
I think there's room for more. There's certain instruments and certain areas of the summer where we need to spruce up the attendance, I think, near the beginning and near the end. I don't think that's true of cello, but it is of other instruments. I think it's maybe because the school year is beginning earlier for some people or ending later. I don't know what it is, but there is always room for expansion as far as I'm concerned. I want it to grow and grow.
Right. And I think finally, one of the things, Bruce, is that, you know, as when I interviewed you at the beginning of the summer, we spoke about plans for the future when you finally do retire. I can never see you retiring. However, do I assume that you are giving some thought to the idea that SummerKeys will, in fact, I don't want to say outlast you, but will still be there when you finally decide that you're gonna just kind of hang it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, those plans have been made.
Good, good, and so that we, all of us, can look forward to, one hopes, many more years of SummerKeys, many more years of coming up here and listening to really wonderful music, all because of the good offices of this wonderful fellow and genius. And with that, I think I'll bring this to a close and thank all of our panel members here, Peter Lewy, Rosalee Woodward, Carol Runberg, and of course, the maestro, Bruce Potterton. I'm Frank Van Riper, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank